All right, we are recording it now. Hello, all. Good evening. A very warm welcome and thanks for joining us today. So, this is the 11th edition of BizKnight that we are hosting at ThoughtWorks Hyderabad. I'm your host, Akanksh, for the evening. So, this time we're back with a very interesting discussion, like usual. So, in this session, we will primarily look at how we'll get to know the evolution of how the cloud has been going on and narrowing it down to how the implementation of cloud would be to the SMB kind of a context, small and medium businesses, and how we as IT consultants need to evolve to serve the clients for this transformation so that we can make them prepared for this transformation. In this whole journey, we can really make it smooth for them. So as a quick housekeeping item before we get started, request you to reduce all the parallel internet activities. We will have an exclusive question and answer kind of a segment at the end, but still that doesn't mean you should stop yourself from asking questions, because this is one of the very less least kind of sessions where you actually get to interact with the presenter directly, because fortunately for us, Sharath has been kind enough to have those sessions right in, because usually most of the people wouldn't like to have interactions during their session. They see it as interruptions, but Sharath would like to resolve the queries right in there. So also feel free to use the chat feature to add in your comments, raise your questions, put feedback, everything. And finally, before I hand it over to Sharath, a quick introduction. Sharath is a technology leader with over 2 decades of experience in IT industry. He's currently the founder at TRUMPR, and he's worked in different roles during his tenure in this last 20 plus years in IT industry. Few of the companies include Microsoft, SAP, ADP, Coney Labs, and a couple of other startups. He's also seen the industry grow through the different transformations, which would include, like, you name any kind of a transformation, he's been part of it. Like it could be a dot-com crash, www, World Wide Web, Y2K days, a mobile revolution, or the latest is the social revolution. So in the last 3 months, he's been interacting with several entrepreneurs and SMB owners, and also he's closely working with the printing industry currently to help them adopt cloud solutions applying the AI, artificial intelligence. And he strongly believes that every industry supporting the mankind will actually go through a digital transformation, or probably is currently going through the digital transformation today, and which will disrupt the existing business processes and the way business models work today, resulting in a new economic and a world order. In fact, if I have to share a personal experience, I aspire to be a product manager someday. So while I was working with ADP, while I used to reach out to different product leaders and technology leaders, when I went out to Sharad someday, I used to talk about, okay, do I have to learn the inbound product management activities, outbound product management activities? He said, no, you need to learn how AI and ML works and how you need to implement it to solve real-time business problems. So that's the kind of an experience he carries. And today, in today's world, experience is everything. I mean, that's really about Sharath, and I can just keep talking about him, but I don't really want to take a lot of time. And I'll pass. And having said that about Sharath, I'll pass it on to him. So Sharath, over to you.
Thank you, Akash. That was a very flattering introduction, but definitely I think whatever Akash talked about in terms of my belief and the way I have seen evolution, I 100% agree with it. Like definitely I've been fortunate enough, and that is what I believe, that everybody who's in this industry is fortunate enough to see a change and be a part of transformation. Because if I think about it, the way the work is structured, it is based on industrial era. So we go to office, we work over there and come back. Our education is structured based on industrial era. That is, you study, and then you work. But the way, especially in the last 1 year, things have unfolded, I think all of that is bound to change. The fact is that the gig economy is here. The concept of going to a place of work and doing things over there will definitely get changed, as well as education is going to change. So you think about it, in our careers, that is the generation in which I belong, we picked up one career and we lived with that career for our entire life, or for a most part of our life, although we kept on learning a new things. Whereas our parents, they were like, they picked up one job and they remained in that. So in our generation, what happened was that we moved to different organizations, but the career remained the same. However, when I talk to my own kids who belong to the next generation, or even people who are slightly younger to me, that is maybe 15 years younger to me, not 2 decades of experience, but just 5 years of experience, most often my view about it is that the era of being a student and being a professional is changing. You will be student and professional for lifetimes, and you will experience multiple professions, because every 5 years the IT industry will bring in such a transformation that the way you've been working in other industries, be it legal industry, be it consulting industry, printing industry, you name it, manufacturing, everything will keep on changing. And that is why your professions will keep changing, and you will have to learn new things, and will be continuously evolving. So that is, like my belief, and I'm just trying to say actually what Akank said. And as he mentioned during the discussion in terms of the rules, I would like this interaction to be as much as possible interactive. I don't want this to be a monologue. So you can raise your hand, or you can, whatever way, if you put up a comment, I will bring you up, or I think Krishna will bring you up and you can make your statement. So I want it to be as interactive as possible. And with that, I'll get started just to give you a little more context from a structured perspective. What we are talking about, that, in terms of the agenda, just give me a second, let me bring this up. In terms of the agenda, as I mentioned, I will talk a little bit further more about my journey and the observations. And when I say my journey and my observations, I will give a little bit of context that when I started 2 decades back, what was my experience with people at that point in time, and now 2 decades later, when I talk to people with the same background and same similar experience, how that language has changed, how phenomenally the technology has impacted, that within 2 decades you're interviewing people with the same background, but the way they come across is very, very different now. So I'll talk a little bit about that, then I'll get to the very specifics. One of the things that, when we work over here in this part of the world, your interaction with the customers on the ground is a lot lesser. That is true for most outsourcing kind of, not outsourcing I would say, but most of the companies over here, because mostly we are working for Western clients. Of course, there are companies, great companies like Flipkart, Myntra in India, but still I think majority of us have been in companies which are serving the Western markets. So I had lesser opportunity to interact with customers, especially in this part of the world. So one of the things that I have been doing over the last 3 4 months is talking to people directly on what is their perception about technology, where do they see, and it has definitely given me insights which I couldn't have imagined if I continued to do the work that I was doing earlier. So I'll share those insights. What are the one wow moment or the wonder moment for me? And then, based on my understanding, my experience, and my experiences in the shop floor kind of things, I'll talk about where do I see the next wave of innovation, which primarily I don't think so would be very different from what you can imagine, but I'll just give you context and give you a like little bit of awareness so that you start thinking about it. And then I'll talk about how the role of technology in the short term and in the long term is going to change our lives, as we've been talking about, and what can we do. So it is more about my experiences, and it's not about my experience. I would say that we belong to the same industry. It's about our experiences. So make this as interactive as possible. At any point in time, if you want to challenge some of my observations, you're most welcome to do that. So really quick, I started as a developer like anybody else, then as a consultant for some time, and then product management, and now I'm doing independent consulting. Now I'll give you some certain things which happened, when I started 2 decades back. Really, like when I would talk to people inside an organization, these are consultants. Whenever I started was an HR consulting firm, and I was the first technology person in that company, and it was genuinely a startup, because it was a startup which was ahead of its time, and we did very well financially as well as in terms of scaling the business. And I was the first tech person on that particular team, and this company would receive HR related data. So we were a kind of a HR consulting firm. So we'll get a lot of data from different companies, and that data would be number crunched. And based on that, we will actually provide reports whether salaries are competitive or not. Now, at that point in time, this company had a lot of high-end consultants from IIMs and the best of the places, and they would be doing consulting work. And when you will talk to them about technology, they will see it as an extended arm. They will see it as a different function. They will see it as a support function. Generally speaking, although it was like, yes, it's the next wave, but nobody was able to appreciate that this next wave is going to define all the functions going forward. So people will be like, yeah, I don't understand technology. They would be actually making those kind of statements. There are only one or two people who are genuinely interested in trying to tell you how they work, and they would be knowing a little bit of coding. But most people would be averse to technology. But 2 decades later, today, when I talk to a similar consultant from IIMs who's into HR tech, HR business, he'll say, I need to learn a little bit of Python. They will say that I want to learn a little bit of how to actually pull my data in Excel and do the number crunching. So that same persona, which 2 decades was thinking of this work as a kind of a support and a different kind of a work which they don't want to learn. Now they believe that it is a super important part of their work, and they're willing to learn about it. So that's one of the primary thing. The other thing which I observed, that earlier when you would think about it, like most of the software was about productivity. That, okay, yes, if this thing works, then that is good. So there was no thought about how do you help people adopt a solution. You put the solution in the market and let people try it out. So effectively speaking, what we're talking about is the two things that have happened big time in these 2 decades. And as we were talking about that, since this era, this 2 decades is a long period, two things that have happened big time is the democratization of technology, and the other is that the software has become a lot more emotional. When I say it has become democratized, what I mean to say is that, you know, earlier, even as a tech professional, my the bytes that will I will use would be in my 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. job or whatever was that duration, and it would be only that in my family I would be using the bits and bytes because it was primarily supporting the productive work. But as time has progressed, the concept of computing has moved away from just supporting the office systems, supporting the productive work to our lives. And the hardware has played a major role. So it has increased in terms of the breadth. And at the same time, what has also happened is that because we are bringing in new and new people into it, the likes, we have these social tools like Facebook, LinkedIn, which are more emotional in nature. So you're not talking about only productive work, but also feeling good. And in fact, if you look at it, the curve has reversed. Earlier, when I started, technology was more in the enterprise and less in our personal lives. But in this new era, what has happened is that technology is more in my personal life, and the world of work is trying to catch up with it. So if you think about it, when you actually share a photograph on Facebook, people like it and it is very emotional in nature. Whereas when you actually complete a task inside your office, it's not so much emotional in nature, and tasks still get lost because it's not giving you that gratification. So the software is becoming democratized and at the same time more emotional. So that is what my primary observation is. And one of them, the democratization has given the breadth to the solution, and emotional aspect has given the depth to the solution. What it means is that by democratization, more and more people are able to use it because the hardware is cheaper, we are in everybody's pocket. So it is, and this will continue to explode. Today we are talking about mobile phones as our extension. Tomorrow it might be a chip inside our body which is just trying to track everything that is happening, which to a certain extent Fitbit is, but Fitbit is still not reached in every person's wrist. It will soon be there. And then as soon as the child is born, not only you're registering him for Aadhaar, you're also giving him some kind of a chip which maps him back to the DNA. So he'll become more and more part of our daily lives and everybody's life. And the other aspect is the emotional part of it, that it will try and nudge you to do the things. Whether they are right or wrong can be debated. One will give the breadth and the other will give the depth. I'll take a pause over here and like to throw out a question that, like, what do you think in terms of the adoption of the solution? When do you think has something like this really influenced you, that you didn't wanted to use it but you started using it? Has that happened? And do you think that that is the way it is going to be going forward, that the systems will start dictating to you rather than us using the systems? Isn't that so? Any comments, any thoughts?
For me, hi, my name is Kunal. I am so my point is I had this feeling when smartphones came. Okay, so I had a very basic phone, which was a Nokia, some model, which didn't have any smartness, and I was content with that phone. But gradually, what happened? My friends started getting smartphones. Then they started using WhatsApp and everything, and I started feeling left out. And then I had to transfer my transfer to a smartphone. So
Absolutely.
so that happened. I mean, that I felt personally where I had to, which was not very necessary initially for me, but gradually it became.
Yeah, gradually it just starts seeping into our lives. So what starts as an early adopters, very soon more and more people start taking it. Very valid point, Kunal. And to a certain extent, it is also because of the fact that earlier it was a nice to have. I'll give you an incident. When I was 15 years back, when I started my product management career at Microsoft, we developed a platform, Office Live, which was primarily targeted for SMBs. And as part of that, we never launched in India, but I was very passionate about trying out technology with different segments, and this was for SMB. So created a small solution for people who are in Shilpa Kala Vedika, and we interviewed a lot of artisans. And at that point in time, when we used to go and meet people, some of the people who are Madhubani artisans or Kashmiri, people who are selling those carpets and rugs, some of them would be very excited. We will tell them that we will put up your products and you can display it across the globe, and you have to just give a URL and at least you have the catalog over there. And some of them would be very excited, and some of them would just say that I don't understand this completely and I can't give pictures. But today, if you go and talk, everybody, be it a tea seller, or it just penetrates into the life. Now, whether it is good or bad, it's a different thing. But the democratization is going to, slowly it starts with early adopters. So today Fitbit is there because doctors are not saying that show me your Fitbit, this thing. But very soon, at some point in time, as it starts penetrating more, the healthcare industry might start asking you, like, show me your charts, show me this, and then only I can prescribe medication, and it becomes part of our lives and it transforms us. So very valid point. I think it's slowly. So continuing with my passion of interacting with people, and trying to see where how technology is impacting. As I got out of Kony and I wanted to do certain things, I was not very clear that I'll go and actually hit the printing industry as the way where I want to target, because where I wanted to start was something which can actually impact the masses. And one of the things that I felt was a digital marketing, that everybody is wanting to do a little bit of digital marketing. You're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, a yoga practitioner needs, a CA needs. And that's how I actually started questioning people. And I'll kind of touch upon why I've zeroed down on, or at least I'm focusing on printing industry. But I interviewed people who are independent practitioners, like the yoga guys, the fitness experts, and I am actually coaching some of them and what they need. Then I spoke to a few people who are into a manufacturing business. These are companies which are like either having 5 to 10 people, as well as up till 200 people companies, and then small to medium consulting businesses. And while I was talking to them, I was just trying to understand that how are they leveraging technology today, and what are their primary pain points that they are trying to address. And what my this thing was, that the key findings that I felt was that everybody believes that they need some kind of a digital solution, and they're already using something. And because of the fact that they're using, either the business is using, or because of the fact the customer is using a part of the technology like WhatsApp, people are sending orders on WhatsApp, it is in their mix. And everybody wants a piece of this to be, becoming much more streamlined for them. But everybody wants to be on digital marketing. They want that, that's an aspiration that they have, that my business, my brand should exist on Instagram, Facebook. And however, what the common thing is that whether you talk to a yoga practitioner who is an independent person, or you talk to a person who is running a small manufacturing unit, the trust, or one employee inside that manufacturing unit, that although everyone appreciates it and everybody feels the pain or has an aspiration around it, but they are not willing to transform. If you give them a big piece that, okay, tomorrow you're going to actually capture an order like this, they don't want to do it. They can only take one step at a time, like as you're talking about it. And as Kunal just mentioned, like it is something else which draws, I won't say that it is a hurt, but it is an adoption which drives people to actually start using something. So more than 80% will follow once that 20% have started using it significantly. So pretty much what just Kunal said, that is the primary part of it. If I was to just summarize these learnings, and primarily what I felt was that when you go and talk to people, they will always start with a very aspirational need. That, when I started talking to these people, one of the industries that I was talking to was, as I mentioned, printing industry. And they will talk about, mostly like, I want to do something like Vista Print happens to be one of the websites or big businesses which allows you to customize prints and take orders online and design your own stuff. So people would want that aspirational stuff. The yoga instructor would say that, yes, I want to put up yoga videos over there. And they will talk a lot about those. But as you go, allow them to, you know, just be with them for their daily routine, you will realize that they are more willing to change where it is paining. When I say where it is paining, is that, in case of, because I spent a lot of time in these manufacturing units, and what I realized was that although he's talking about that he wants to have these websites and all of this, but really speaking, there are a lot of things which he has not done to actually even reach the stage of website. Take for example, I'll give some examples. And this is common for the 3 to 5 printing companies that I visited, as well as from consulting companies. But consulting companies, the pain was different. In printing companies, what has happened is that they have evolved from small companies to large corporate, relatively bigger than what they were like 5 years back, 7 years back. So they haven't even created processes to actually allow people to do business without being people centric. So, and that would pain. So take for example, in a printing company, typically they will have people coming in giving orders, and only the entrepreneur or the primary owner would know how to actually give the pricing. So behind the, although now they want this to be there, and the entire process is completely fragmented. And when you start telling them that, yes, if you put in some solutions in place, you will have to first do that homework, but you can, that is where they're willing to put their time and money. Whereas that whole aspirational aspect of it, at least in an Indian context, what I found was, although they want to be there, but Indian markets are value for money markets. They will look for it that, okay, if I'm putting my money over here, if I'm putting my time over here, what is it that saves me? So they are willing to pay for money. And one of the things that I have in the subsequent slide, and I lay stress, that as we were talking about, software is getting more and more emotional. For me, one of the learnings when I went and actually sat in these printing companies was to really understand the evolution, because then only we can actually give the technology. Because earlier we were a sales driven industry before cloud started. What it means by sales driven industry was that, you will create a solution, you will make a pitch over there, you will have long implementation cycles, and people will start, you will have a distribution chain around it. But as the cloud is happening, that model is not there. You're not going to manufacture and then sell. You're going to actually go and say that, okay, this is what I'm trying to do, how many takers are there, and he will be willing to take one single step at a time, as I mentioned. So you need to identify that. And to be able to identify that, what you need to really understand is the psychological aspect of it. That is in a very specific thing, that what is it that they are willing to change, and what is the next step, and what are they willing to pay for it. So that, at least was my learning, that take one step at a time and understand the biggest pain point. And for that, you will have to understand the culture of a place also, because in an Indian market it is value for money. Maybe if you're doing it in a US market, it might be different. So
Quick question, Sharad.
yes.
Is this going for just value for money and not really aspirational? Is it got to do just with the producers or even the consumers? I mean, because there is no downstream consumption for that aspirational gains or whatever it is, the investors are also the entrepreneurs or the owners of these businesses. They're also holding back investing in. What is it both of them, or primarily the driven by the business investments?
No, so there's a stark difference in between how a consumer behaves with the software and how a business behaves with the software. And as we were talking about earlier, when you're talking in context of a consumer psychology, you're playing with one person's psychology. And when you are talking in context of a business, you're talking about a group of people. So at least my personal observation is that, like, it is much easier to actually do that bit by bit transformation for one particular user, because what is happening in the industry is that the machines are understanding about humans, and they're nudging one single human at a time, and they're taking them through that journey. Whereas when we're talking about in an industry, even in this printing industry, if he's saying that, I'll give you an example, I'll try and be as specific as possible. uh, he was very clear that he wants a website and he wants people. But now the biggest question for him is that my designers, they are having all the images on their computers. I have to tell them to actually upload it on this WooCommerce website. How are they going to do it? So it is a big change. Now the designer is involved, the entrepreneur himself is involved, and nobody wants to invest time, because that means the designer will have to learn something new. He's not ready to learn it. And the entrepreneur will have to take time from the designer and also invest in website. So that is where the dilemma comes in. It is not at one person at a time. So, and one process at a time, it is very strongly cascaded, and even customer has to change. So it becomes different in case of consumer world and in case of business world. So that's my observation. Hope that answers or gives you some reflections on what I'm talking about.
Yep, thanks.
So at least that's what I felt, like people have started adopting cloud, but whatever is free, they have taken one small bit. They started using email, then they started using, file storage, but and then they started using WhatsApp. Then a lot of times people will send orders on WhatsApp, and then when they will send orders on WhatsApp, the bills will also go on WhatsApp. So it is all fragmented. So parts of the solution have come in, and that is true for every industry. So when I was talking about, I was talking more of printing industry. And I also spoke to a couple of CA firms. And before, at least before the pandemic, after pandemic, things have changed a little bit, but each CA will have like 4 or 5 accountants and they're getting their files, everything on email. So there's no real collaboration, but everybody is feeling the pain. So when I started talking to these printing guys, what I realized was that, like in any corporate, there are silos. There are silos in terms of the fact that you have some data on an Excel file, some data on a Word file in a Gmail, this thing, and then a lot of your queries, because they're coming on WhatsApp, they're coming on email. A lot of that content exists in the unstructured part of the world. So there are, these two are big silo pieces that are existing, and to a certain extent in the corporate world also, if you look at the solutions that are coming up around teams and all, they're just beginning to happen, wherein you are actually looking at unstructured messaging system, trying to actually bring in these two pieces together, that you have your tasks and you have your actual discussions going on together. And then there is a whole world, when we're talking in context of the printing industry especially, or wherever the manufacturing is involved, there are machines, and these machines will have toners, they will have their service dues, and to a certain extent they are generating some amount of data, but still, like, it's very limited wherein it is integrated. So it is resulting in another kind of a silo wherein machine is separate. So you have communication channels, you have your actually transactional systems, and then you have your physical systems, and these are all resulting in a different kind of a data and process silos. And each process and data is owned by a different set of people in most places. Like, if I talk about customer management and billing, in this case, in a printing industry, is owned by a entrepreneur himself. The design and the fact that he's spending so much, the customer is going to spend time, actual time, that is owned by the designer. Then the fact that once the design has been finalized, the printing and the fact that the production is owned by a different group of people. And this is true for any industry. If you look at it, just the scale will be different. And anything you touch, let us say that the customer order process is changing, everything downstream changes, and everything else has to change. Because if you have to take a customer order, the first thing that you need is that you need to be organized in terms of your images that need to come from designer. That means the designer has to change. So what is it that is needed? And to a certain extent, if you look at it in the world of Facebook and Instagram, we're talking about one person changing, but over here we are talking about the DNA of the organization that needs to change. Everybody needs to change, and the entire process needs to change. And what is that emotion that we are, if you look at it, Microsoft has been big on this, at least in the last 5 years, this whole idea of empathy, that when we are trying to bring in a change inside an organization, one of the key aspects, the emotional aspects that we will have to tap in sooner or later, and these cloud systems will start getting in there. Because right now we're still in that phase wherein we are trying to do productive work, trying to bring in data sets in an organized manner. But very soon you will start seeing that there will be ways of nudging people to change in the organizational world, wherein it will also have very deep psychological understanding of how this is applied in business. And at least when I was trying to do this with the printing industry, what I felt was that what it takes to motivate an entrepreneur versus what it takes to motivate a designer might be two different things. And somehow, if you're designing a solution, you will have to think about it, that what does it take an entrepreneur to actually invest the money, and what does it take a designer to put in that extra effort of organizing your images in such a manner that people can easily see that. Because both of them are in at least extremely important. If I was to take even one process of taking the customer order being done automatically, I need both these guys. And for them, both of them, the motivation is different. One is looking at it from a purely the perspective of profitability and customer retention, whereas the other is purely looking at it to a certain extent from a design fulfillment perspective. And maybe, when I started thinking about it, when a customer gets a pamphlet designed, he's just paying the money, and somewhere the entrepreneur is paying the salary to the employee. But really the employee or the designer who actually worked on it never got any real social currency from the person who actually took that pamphlet, and he might have been very happy. But most businesses today, if you buy a, a product from the market, you're only looking at it as a brand. You only appreciate the brand. But very soon, the way things are moving, and especially in the hospitality industry, you might have started seeing it, that people are starting to appreciate individuals. That okay, XYZ, and most of the hospitality chains have evolved to that level, because there the employees are a lot customer facing, and that impacts very directly. But very soon that will happen in the entire industry, that every employee in itself will become a brand. And yes, the brand in itself will have its value system, but each individual employee is a brand. And when we design our software, and when we think about our software, we should think about how do we bring in this concept of empathy and enable everybody to get their share of social currency. And as I mentioned earlier, I'll take a pause over here, and anybody who wants to make some statements, contradict this. Primarily, if we look at it, what we are trying to proclaim over here is that understanding of human psychology while creating software and getting them implemented is extremely important. So whatever is the design thinking, that is extremely important.
So, Sharad, the quick question. So, I don't know what you have up front, but are the big technology players, the cloud players at least, are they aware of this and hence creating these easy penetrable avenues for these SMBs to get onto the cloud? I mean, I'm sure everything that Google does uh, uh, is to ensure that it gets adoption first and then monetize them later. So all other players doing going through a similar strategy to attract SMBs onto cloud.
So from a SMB perspective, see, right now the situation that we are in is that we are, most of the cloud providers, they are, be it in terms of Google or Microsoft, they're offering something free. So either you can take an email free, and with that you get storage free, and then you get some office tools free, and you take a part of that process and put it on the cloud. And then there are also other players which are looking at it from a perspective of uh, you have a full platform layer, and then it allows you to integrate. Now that is happening in terms of that people are taking one part of the problem and trying to solve it. And it is still, I would say, to a certain extent, in an enabling process, that okay, you have these. And as this thing starts evolving, the biggest roadblocks that I am, at least that is my personal perception, is the fact that although all these tools are existing, but they're so fragmented that they're not coming together. So most of the companies that they're trying to do is they are trying to come up with partnerships from an SMB perspective, or from a perspective of just enabling different players to hook things together. So in terms of, if you look at the Google stack, it has, it allows you to do storage, it has the basic website as part of it, it has the office tools along with it, and then there is a full stack which allows you to program GC, keep your entire data structures in the backend, very heavy data sets. And it has, that is your starting point. Then it has got the fact that okay, it has enabled all these integrations by having Zapier as part of their partnership, which allows you to integrate these different tools together. So right now their primary goal is to get more and more data into their system and enable these integrations through these kind of tool sets. the next wave that these companies are trying to set up for is that Google is focusing on finance and healthcare and a few other verticals. They will have an AI layer on top of it, and that is wherein all of these solutioning will come in, wherein they will automatically start nudging people that okay, do this as the next step, do that as the next step. But right now it is up to the people who are actually stitching these solutions together using different Google stacks and stuff like that to figure out how do they nudge people to take the next step, because they are they are the providers in terms of the basic infrastructure, but the final solutioning is still reaching out through people who are integrating it, be it the digital marketing or be it the people like us who are taking one vertical and trying to solve it.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so take for example in terms of like Practo, it has taken these different silos and processes and brought them together, and now you can actually taken a part of it, and now you can book an appointment with the doctor and look after that. Similarly, the legal industry, you can actually hire an advocate online and find it out. So there's some of these parts of the processes which have gotten siloed, which have been stitched together and started getting offered. But there's a whole back penetration that needs to happen in the manufacturing industry and other aspects of the industries, which will take some time, and that is where the opportunity is for us, and to actually go and recreate this.
There's a question from Adarsh on the chat.
Yeah, sure. Can we take that?
Are you able to see the chat?
Mm,
Or I can read it out for you.
yeah.
Okay, to your point of empathy and understanding the user while building a solution, how do we tackle the situation where we have silos that you already spoke about, and each silo has a different pain point or a need? Any specific way?
See, it's very difficult to actually say this is one way to actually tackle a particular silo. But at the same time, as in the previous question that me and Ravi took, the entire industry is aware of this, that we're creating more silos. So they are also providing mechanisms to hook up things. So today, if you get an email and it's, or let's say that if you like take for example in my case in printing industry, uh, one of the things that we were trying to do was that okay, if somebody wants to send a inquiry for a particular product, then what is the best way? Because now you have to fill in a few fields. I need to know what is the paper GSM if I was to get technical, and then be able to respond either on WhatsApp or on Gmail, because he's going to send it through Gmail or WhatsApp, and that is the place where they will look for. So now you have tools like Zapier, which allows you that okay, anytime somebody submits a query and it either hits on a Google sheet or it hits on another area on GCP, it can invoke another calculation inside Google sheet which calculates the price, and then also on behalf of the entrepreneur send out a Gmail response, or it can be a WhatsApp response. So Zapier is a tooling technology which allows you to integrate the entire stitch around that. Similarly, if you look at the tools that are coming from WhatsApp or Facebook in general, are targeted towards that. You can actually, everybody would have experienced that you start a conversation on WhatsApp with some of the businesses, they'll say 1 2 3 to actually pick a choice, and then there is a bot that works behind the scene. And behind the scene, what WhatsApp has also started offering, and we are exploring that solution in printing industry, is that it is offering a full service support service kind of a solution. So entire CRM is coming in into from WhatsApp. So all of that is getting slowly integrated, but there is no one-stop fix. And that is where I think as experts, our opportunity is that we understand each cloud technology so well that we understand what is the kind of AI algorithms it provides, what are the kind of integrations it provides, and what do we expect in near future. Because That is exactly to a certain extent what this slide is trying to tell, that when I started looking at this industry, printing industry, I was thinking that I will develop a solution for people to be able to, take a template, create a pamphlet out of it and send it out for printing. But then when I started, that required a full commerce integration. But then what we figured out was that rather than trying to create the entire solutioning, what if we just created a plugin for WooCommerce and Shopify and enabled that? So that is where our opportunity is, that there might not be one solution, because initially I started that I'll develop my own. So we created a plugin around that rather than, so we need to know, and what is the plugin that we needed to create first? It has to be WooCommerce or Shopify. That's our call depending upon which segment you are trying. But there is a hook. You can do that with WooCommerce. Anybody who is thinking about creating a platform is thinking about this problem. And you need to know how to plug that gap for the solution that you're trying to create. And the second point that is there on this slide is AI algorithms. Now, for healthcare, maybe Google will come up with their own algorithm which will give you broad-based healthcare understanding. But if you are trying to develop a solution which is very specific for oncology or it's very specific for diabetes, you might customize it, or you might deploy your own solutions, and that is where your gig economy comes in place. You again need to understand that, okay, I have the basic cloud on Google, I have the AI algorithm for healthcare from them, but now I want to customize it for one specific feature sets. Then what is the kind of solutioning I need? What is the kind of data? And that is why Google recently acquired this company called Kaggle, which allows you to actually take in talent from different places and then customize and get your custom algorithms done. So I don't think so there is one answer for this particular question on how to solve it, but everybody in the cloud world understands it, and they're opening up the world in such a manner that you can actually exchange data, you can integrate. One of the classic cases from my experience I'll tell you is that 10 years back or 15 years back, if you were an SAP and you were doing SAP implementation, you cannot have that data talk to anything else. It was a very tight box. And that was true for most of the proprietary software. But today, the first things people think about when they're developing any big solutions, it's about APIs. How do I expose my APIs so that more and more developers can do that? So that is what I would actually provide as an input. Any other questions or observations?
Hey Sharad, this is Venkat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was really nice to listen to all your session. Yeah, but this is mostly, as far as my understanding goes, this is mostly around technology and its capabilities that can cater to printing industry. Correct?
I would say that is the place wherein I am trying to apply some of these things, but I
Right.
don't think so. It is like that is the only thing in printing industry. It is common for everything, like the basic philosophy is common across.
Right. So, what I actually was thinking is what is the future of this printing industry? I mean, in general, I mean, I want to, since you have been involved with this industry for a very long time, and from a technical aspect, but I assume that you have been in contact with printing industry and the business owners of that printing industry. So, have you read any kind of negative pulse, or did you get any such readings from
No, so
industry players?
yeah, let me answer that. So one is that, like the print, I'm not really looking at purely as a printing industry, because I'm
Mhm.
looking that as a channel and trying to understand where the opportunity is. And the reason I landed at printing industry is because I was trying to look at social media as a particular area, and you needed graphic designers over there, and graphic designers took me over there. So printing industry as it is obviously will continue to exist, and there is a huge scope, because if you look at how it is transforming, in the earlier world, printing was more about books and things like that,
Newspapers,
newspapers and those kind of
magazines, yeah.
magazines. Those things are coming down. But then
Right.
there is the whole world of logistics is changing. So when I say printing industry, it also includes the packaging industry. So
Okay.
wherein a lot of traditional printers are seeing an opportunity, how can they transform themselves into packaging world? And that again is being driven by the IT industry, because now you have a new set of logistic companies. Amazon is doing different kind of work. Flipkart is doing. So now you need a lot of packaging, and a lot of packaging, if you look at it today, is still Amazon branded. But more
Right.
and more brands are becoming aware of the fact that they are losing their brand identity when they are not using the right printing on their product lines. So more and more people are trying to come up with new packaging to enable that. So that industry, which was generally a printing industry, is slowly moving there. So I don't know whether how big is that industry, but it is moving more towards the packaging side of things, and
Mhm.
wherein they're trying to do branding. The other thing which is happening in the printing industry or this packaging world is the fact that earlier they would hire designers, and they are actually feeling the pinch that they cannot get really quality designers, and whereas that work can move online. So there's no real good place for them to hire gig workers or graphic designers. So for people like us, that is where the opportunity is, that you need a marketplace on number of places, wherein you need a marketplace for packaging industry, you need a marketplace for gig economy, and those are not existing. So that is where we are trying to focus. And per se, printing industry is going through its own transformation.
Thank you.
So
Thank you
if
so
you
much.
look at purely numbers, I don't have pure printing numbers per se, but I know how that industry is transforming and where they need people who can actually, they can hire on an ongoing basis without having to be there on the payroll.
Mhm.
They want a marketplace wherein they can actually ask for consumables and trade manufacturing supplies easily. That is the second place. And then third is obviously wherein they can offer their services as packaging industry. So there's a new marketplace that exists, which is completely prime open for actually penetration. And that will happen whether I do, somebody else does, that's a different thing. And today, if you look for a wedding card, you go to one particular website, and that's again where in the cloud, because you can have Google Cloud being leveraged to look for images which are similar. So, but now if you have to customize that algorithm, that okay, if somebody is searching for a wedding card and he's either in a Hindu or a Muslim, then how do you actually, based on some kind of heuristics, give them a wedding card which they would like? So all of that kind of opportunities exists for tech companies to go and leverage that.
Okay. Understood. Thank you,
And
Sharad.
that is true for any industry. This is an industry in which I have gone. The marketplaces will become common, gig economy will happen, IoT will happen, AI will happen, and any industry you pick, you will see an opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Sharad.
Okay. So really quickly, what we are saying, because to a certain extent, from a transformation perspective, we are saying that our way of working is going to change. What is happening is that the work and life, earlier it was very clear segregation. Now that is blurring, and there will be an opportunity. And a lot of things will move to chat and messaging. Earlier it was about customers, now it is about subscribers. And this will happen more and more. Supply chains will become marketplaces. Earlier it was a capex driven, that you invest money in software, and after that it is a support cost. But now it is moving to an operational expenses, that you take subscriptions and allow that. Then acquisition to sign up, that earlier it was customer acquisition, now you have to sign up customers, allow them to use it and try it out. Manufacturing to printing, as you were saying, that in terms of as Venkat just pointed out, what is the opportunity or negative things? Because the whole new world that will open up as an outcome of 3D printing. I didn't touch much upon it, but a lot of things which today are like per se uh, uh, more mass built will become custom built. If I need a chair which is based on my height and my weight, I think very soon, in another 5 to 7 years, the printing technology will reach to a stage where it will start get much easier to procure custom products, and presence to virtual presence. So all of this will happen through IT, and wherein the role would be is that a lot of things which were earlier uh, owned by a process owner, by a developer, now will become a citizen developers this thing. The other aspect is that, you know, earlier it was all about development, now it is analyst to expert. Deployments will change, and there will be much bigger roles for data scientist. So those are the kind of transformations that will happen in the IT roles. And I will not get into the customer life cycle, but because I think to a certain extent we have talked about it. But the primary objective of putting it over here is the fact that when you're thinking about solutions, you have to think about on what is the investment you're going to make, what is the data that you will get in the process, and how will you nudge people to take those actions. And the final thing that I would like to think about is that, you know, focus on vertical solutions, try and get one industry at a time and look at how to actually relieve that, and figure out what are the pain points and how to nudge people to overcome that. And not only that, what we're talking about is that enable people to learn, because what are the things that I have observed is that a lot of things people are not able, they're not spending time to learn. In IT industry, we're very used to learning new things, but the moment you take it out in the other industry segments, even for that matter, I have seen doctors, really qualified doctors, you go to Apollo hospitals or Citizen Hospital, they will still think about technology as a very touchy subject. They will not be able to learn and apply it. They will be using it just as a this thing. So we have to figure out on how do we enable more people, and wherever we are doing implementation, how to get champions to actually do that. And then identify industry specific data solutions for optimizing outcomes. That is, when you are operating in printing industry, really figure out which are the operators over there, and understanding of underlying cloud platforms for enabling above. What I was meant to say was the example that I was trying to give, that if you're thinking about wedding cards, which is primarily an image kind of a thing, then what is the underlying technology you need to enable that? And one thing that I have learned through this entire process of last 3 to 4 months exploring is that, you know, really, and this is what I want to do actually going forward also, even if I do something else, is like, as I mentioned earlier, 10-15 years back, we tried out with the Shilpa Kala Vedika artisans. For you to be able to actually really appreciate the impact, you should be interacting with people locally and applying technology at a local level, that, and help them learn a technology. So maybe it is, you know, go to a small shop, help them have a Facebook shop, or, you know, inquiry form, something which helps you interact and also apply your knowledge. So with that, I will take a pause and kind of, I'm on the last slide on how we see the penetration going forward. These are just numbers. These are the only numbers that I could bring in. So I'll take a pause. I'll take any questions or any observations.
Sharad, I think we have a question from Amit Prasad. He says, can you elaborate on citizen developer?
And I will add on to that question, Sharad, because this is something that I'm very vocal about myself. That the transition of like developer persona is changing from a tech heavy somebody who's with like real programming skills and all those things to a more of a citizen developer. And I personally see that it's going to take more and more of the space, and it could end up in this fashion that there is a product vision and what needs to be done, the value to be delivered, and then you don't need actual programmers. I'm sorry for folks who are on the call who are actual programmers, but is how much of the shift is going to happen. And you may start with what a citizen developer is, and then say if my view of the future is right. If so, how far? Or you can.
So I'll give you my perception. So I think because I think all said and done, it is future to a certain extent. Developers are still needed, and maybe they will always be needed, but it will change in terms of the way the roles are structured. And first, let me define what a citizen developer is, and then we'll get into the specifics of where I see it going forward. The way I look at citizen developer is anybody who understands their data and their process can be termed as a citizen developer, and who's willing to take an initiative. Because if you look at it, the simplest of the citizen developer is that if I have to really create a formatted Excel file repeatedly, I can record a macro and I can apply that logic again and again, and whatever actions I have taken, it will take into it. Similarly, a citizen developer can be that I've got a paper form. Now I can take a photo of it, and using AI, I can convert it into a basic form, and people can actually start using it to fill in the form. A visitor form inside, a security guard who's sitting outside, he can create a basic form. Instead of taking numbers on a register, he can just take a photograph of a register and create a basic form. So everybody will eventually become a citizen developer, because technology will take us to a level wherein whatever our paper forms today will get converted into system based things. Now the second level of solutioning or this thing is wherein it is a little bit of complex. That okay, if I have created this form, now I have to if the once the production of a printing is complete, I have to change the status, and when the status changes, it should kick off a process to allow people to do send a mail. Now over there again, there is a kind of a process integration, but that also to a certain extent has moved into process automation solutions. Like from Microsoft, it is process automate or power automate, and from Google, as I mentioned, they partnered with Zapier to allow these kind of things, wherein if you've created a form and entry happens into the Excel file or in a worksheet, and you want to trigger something else, again you have something like Zapier, and all the companies are trying to do that. And then the third level is that okay, now I have these nice looking images, but I want to be able to actually apply an AI algorithm on top of it. So how can I find wedding cards which are specific? And there again, it is getting commoditized, because I can suggest that if you're bringing up a form, depending upon the profile of a person, these are the features you can enable. So now citizen developer will be able, because they understand the data so well, they understand the process so well, if they are nudged at the right time, they will be able to do a lot of things. So citizen developer will eventually start becoming more and more common, and more processes and data will move to the right owners. Now, does it mean that the developer, the traditional developer, will cease to exist? I would say the developers wherein they will exist is that some of the core processes will never be completely owned by citizen developer. So in a retail company or product line, that is master data, and there has to be some governance on top of it, and there has to be some security on top of it, because now you're bringing in commerce also. So the developer would be required, or people to actually enable those kind of platforms, to have some kind of a governance, to have some kind of a customization. So some of this master data will exist in each company, and how do they actually enable it for citizen developers? That is where a team of developers and BAs, whether you call them business analysts or you call them as product managers, they would be required. So we are not saying that we are removing this layer, but we are definitely becoming more process enablers, rather than as process owners. Because earlier, if a citizen, somebody who is in the front office has to get an app developed, they have to come to IT, get it done. But now we have created a governance layer, and we have exposed all the data. We are controlling the master data and allowing people to create as many applications as they want. Earlier, IT department was responsible for 150 applications and maybe 5 core applications. Now IT department is responsible for the process, for security, governance, and maybe 5 applications. 150 are owned by the process owners. That's the way I look at it at this point in time. And that is the way, to a certain extent, how If you look at recently, Google acquired AppSheets, and if you look at some of their videos and thinking, and that's how they are also trying to tell the story. And Microsoft is also trying to tell a similar story for citizen developers. Does that answer or add to your thought process?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks much.
Interesting.
Anybody else? Any questions? I know we are out of time. I thoroughly enjoyed. Thank you for being there and listening. Hopefully
Absolutely.
you take away something from this, and good luck. If there are more questions, I'm definitely there to take it.
Cool. Do we have any more questions, people? So just wanted to have a quick call out here, Sharad. Really, thank you for spending some time for giving us, providing us with the ocean of knowledge that you have. And I'm pretty sure each one of the participants have enjoyed the session as much as I did, because there were certain areas I was really connected. Your experience, I mean, the kind of things that you have been associated with, bringing in with examples, bringing that, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the way you actually factored in that emotional aspect. That's
Okay.
how technology was being used versus the way it's being used today, with some real-time examples on what's the way forward. And also, I'm pretty sure you might have struggled with certain things in this whole journey, but rather than we reinventing the wheel, you have certainly come up with certain kind of things. Like, if you really want to do something, here are the ways. Go with a vertical kind of a solution. So that visioning aspect is what I really enjoyed. So I'm pretty sure everybody might have their own kind of anecdotes while they look at the overall presentation. So thanks, Sharad. We really had a great time, and look forward for certain more blogs and sessions from your end. So people who aren't aware, Sharath is also available on LinkedIn. You can always reach out to him, send out a message, and you can follow him, because I personally follow him on LinkedIn, and I really get to learn a lot from him with the kind of perspective he brings into looking at certain things. So thanks, Sharath. Thank you so much.
All
Uh,
right. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot. I thoroughly enjoyed, and thanks for such a nice introduction and summary. Definitely.
I'll record it and I'll send it across to you, Sharath.
Okay.
It's
Oh,
internet YouTube forever.
Sorry,
sorry.
Ravi.
No, I think we are going to put it on YouTube also, right? These things.
We'll make Sharath famous. He's already famous though, but still. So people, Adarsh has just shared the feedback form. So on the chat, so please use that form to fill in your feedback. Be as honest as possible, because this will really help us accommodate even better sessions in the future, and we can have similar sessions like what Sharath has done today. So also would like to take this opportunity to thank ThoughtWorks, who's our sponsor for the night, and also the BizKnight core committee for having a discussion, especially Ravi for reaching out to Sharad and bringing him, because certainly it was a surprise element for most of us to have Sharad. And seriously, Sharad, looking forward to greater sessions in the future. Thanks once again.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks. ThoughtWorks too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.